Dear greetings, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you're from. I'm very, very pleased on behalf of the IFEES and GDC and IUCE community to welcome you. And I'm very, very pleased, given the very close partnership that I have with my dear friend, brother, colleague, Yashin, also, who's been leading several important African engineering education forums and organizations. And he has invited 4 additional leaders that I have the privilege of knowing, also working with in Europe, in the United States, and Africa, and so forth. We are delighted that we are together to be able to celebrate the World Engineering Day. And we've brought together this fantastic panel here to reflect on very important issues that impact our engineering community at a global level. Without giving any further details, I'd also want to put on your radar screen already, we are working closely with African colleagues regarding a Morocco event in April, and I know there are several colleagues from Africa and others are here, and I will be leaving next week to go to South Korea, where we will have our IFEES-GEDC-IUCEE conference in September. So I know several of you will be interested to know of that, and we can continue many of the issues that Yashin and our wonderful colleagues will be discussing this morning. So it's a pleasure to share this important space on World Engineering Day with all of you. Dear Yashin, I leave it in your able hands, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before I start, I just want to make sure that we have all the logistics in order. So if you can kindly let me know if you can see the screen, the technical support. Perfect. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'd really like to illustrate maybe the program for today. And the program is that we would like to firstly start off with my keynote address around some policy perspectives on reimagining engineering education, and then we'll have our group of panelists, and we'll have some engagement from the audience here today. It's a privilege for me to address you today. I'm currently sitting here at Utah State University in the US, and at about 7 a.m. in the morning. And I'm sure since we have a fantastic audience from all around the world, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. So I would like to maybe introduce the topic of today, which is really looking at policy perspectives on engineering education. And maybe when I like to start about it is just to describe the policy context. And you know, people have different ways of viewing policy. And policy is also created at many levels, some at a federal level, some at an institutional level, some are created even at a department level within various institutions. But I would like to think of our policymakers at a global and national level to mean our federal governments, as well as those that set our standards for us to follow, whether it's in higher education or whether it's in engineering, which means our regulatory bodies, our accrediting associations, and so forth. But just to set the stage, if we look at this from a world perspective, the way we regulate policy and the way we come up with policy and how we regulate education is vastly different in many countries. Some of them it's very much stated at a federal or state level, which means that there may be state regulation. In some areas, the autonomy is given to higher education institutions. And in some levels, there is a mixture of these. We also have independent regulation. So for example, we also have NGOs and professional societies that also state these are the requirements that we have for engineers. And those may be independent institutions. So we also need to understand that in the world we have today, there's many complexities and there's many requirements and priorities. And this means that how we define an engineer or an engineering practitioner around the world may be different based on the priorities of different countries. Some countries have a very high population. They may want to develop more specialist type of engineers together with general type of engineers, and so forth. And a very important question that I thought to illustrate this to policymakers more specifically, or people who are involved in policy, is that how do we define the numbers and needs? And a lot of individuals say, well, let's go and ask industry this question. But who in industry do you ask? Do you ask a manager on the floor who's dealing with very technical issues? Do you ask a strategy person at the institution looking at long-term vision? Because it takes time to develop these skills. But also what we recognize is that in the world, we've also redefined the engineering disciplines. And over the years, this has grown to a large number, and we started to rationalize on what it means. Even today, we still have the debate: is IT part of engineering or is it not? And these debates continue to grow. But it's important for us to realize that if we need an engineer to be mobile, how can we have something that is universally accepted? So I would now like to go into some of the drivers behind some of the changes. So when we first came up with engineering, many...
Yes.
Yes.
You want to poll before you get into the content? The poll?
I want to do this after the slide.
My apologies.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of the international drivers or aspects that have moved how we define engineers and what competencies they require, we had a lot of different changes that have come along, and one of them is the technological revolution. And today I don't even know whether to call it the fourth or fifth wave, or the fifth industrial revolution, or the fourth. But essentially, from the time we had the first wave of the fourth industrial revolution, it started to change the ways we think about how we define engineers and how we define competencies. So for example, we had lots of specializations that have come onto the market. So then they were thinking that, okay, do we need to include all these specializations in the undergrad? Or maybe we should just have a base curriculum and think about lifelong learning, and then now start to think more deeply about lifelong learning. We also had climate change, and that gave us the need for us to think about sustainability, life cycle management, ethics, environmental awareness, and so forth. Then we had COVID, and while we were resisting changes in the education sector, more specifically, it almost forced a change. But it also gave us an indication, yes, we can work remotely, we can work virtually, but we also need to be adaptable, and it also gave us a sense of well-being. So these are some of the drivers. Now, before I move to the next step, in our program today, we would also like to engage with you. So we also want to test our polling system. So we're going to ask you some questions about what you think about some policy aspects. So it would be great if you can respond to the poll now. We're going to have Dr. Jamie Gurganis, who will be able to share the poll with us now, and then I'll continue with my presentation. So Jamie, if we can do that, and then we'll continue the presentation.
So go ahead, if you have your phones out, please go ahead and scan the QR code that's on the screen. And what I'm going to ask you to do too, you'll get a prompt. At the bottom there on the second one, it says skip for now. Just go ahead and actually select that. So you should get a prompt. It'll say, dismiss, and then hit skip for now at the bottom. Hopefully you'll see that. And then go ahead, and what you do is on the screen, will have little arrows as you select them. Rank your priorities. What do you think are your priorities in terms of each of these different topics? And once you hit submit, this will automatically update. Oh, we're not supposed to, you didn't want to share the results. Well, that's okay. I'll take them off immediately once they start. Just give them time.
Okay, so if all of you, we will give you about a minute. Okay.
I'll take them off in just a second, Ishi, once they get the scanning.
Okay. Or can you enlarge on the scanning part? Is that possible?
The little, if you get closer to the screen, is
Okay.
that enough?
Okay, that's fine. That's good.
Okay.
Okay, so it'll
Everybody,
be great. It'll be great if we can have everyone's responses, because we will run a similar poll at the end to see if you decide to change your views, and you can change your views based on what you hear. All right. So I'm going to go back to the presentation.
but please make sure you get the poll. Otherwise, I'll send you the link too online. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you can post the link on the chat. Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So once we have all these drivers for change, the world had to get together, and we have a lot of the bigger organizations. And if you're not familiar with them, I think it would be great if you could maybe take a screenshot of this. I think it's very important for engineers to know the international organizations that really come together to actually set and align and harmonize standards. And the reason for this is that we would like to also, if we have developed an engineer in one part of the world, and because there is a huge driver that they could work at any location, any geographic location, that would be our ultimate aim. We need to come up with some mobility agreements, and we need to have recognition of educational accords and professional competency agreements. And many organizations have actually come together. We have the World Federation, the International Engineering Alliance. The International Engineering Alliance currently sets amongst its signatories many of these accords and professional competency agreements. So just to give you some background, when we had all these major drivers around the world and we said, okay, how do we now propose, should we have a change in what we call our harmonized world competencies? And we have what we call the World Federation came together with the International Engineering Alliance. And it firstly started with the first working group. And in the second working group, we actually made a call for change. And that call for change got implemented in terms of a worldwide strategy. And that resulted in the change of the IEA, especially the Washington Accord requirements, which was reviewed and published in 2021. So it went through quite a process. So we had engineers and even policy people that represented policy and international organizations that came together to do this work. But what you'd find is that they mostly focused at that stage on proposing some of the emerging skills and competency areas. And if you look at these, what you'd find is that they are more related to non-technical, more professional related skills. But definitely some of them started to come to the fore at that point in time. So sustainability was a big one. You'll see aspects around entrepreneurship, which is another big one. Then the whole aspect about ethics and responsibility and so forth. Now, what has happened since then, and is that many of the national regulatory bodies, and you may be familiar with some of these, I've just put some up on the screen, they also take various forms. For example, we have ABET and the National Society of Professional Engineers. One, in a way, sets the standards for educational qualifications, and the other one looks at licensure or professional development, professional regulation. For example, in other countries, like in South Africa, it is the Engineering Council of South Africa, which has both of these functions, which means that they regulate the educational requirements as well as they regulate licensure. So national bodies have also started to adopt many of these international harmonized competencies. Now, there's been a lot of pressure, and you may have seen this. And because of the new approach and all these drivers, they came up with this, and I call it the dumping principle, which means that they said, okay, who should be able to accommodate all these competencies? And they said, well, let's just give it to higher education. And as a result, higher education was expected to somehow fill these gaps. And as a result, the gap between the priorities that higher education had to deal with was now incorporating all these different competencies. But I think the conversation should have rather been is that how do we incorporate all these competencies in the entire career pathway? And many countries, what they've done is said, okay, we have all these competencies. We know the specialization ones. We will not over-specialize. One of the principles they adopted is let the basic education and higher education system create some of the life skills and engineering skills that are required for life and create some sense of adaptability so that individuals or engineering practitioners can apply them in these latter stages. But essentially, there was a shift from looking at the engineer from technical skills to professional skills. And there was a big push towards adopting professional skills. Now, professional skills are also described differently, so I'm using the researcher's definition here. So these are essentially your soft skills. But we started to overemphasize the professional skills. And to some extent, we started to lose cognizance or sight of some of the technical skills. So just to give you an example, we put together a global team to look at this, and I'll probably continue for the next 10 minutes here. We put together a global team, and we looked at a number of papers that have research competencies, and we found over about 200 unique competencies that are researched. So the way we are defining competencies are vastly different, and a number of those competencies were professional competencies, and most of them came from an industry perspective, and then we had a large number from an educational perspective, but very little from a policy perspective. So looking at very limited research around perspectives of those that set our policies. So we said, let's start to reimagine competencies, and there was a call for change to think about is technical and professional competencies enough? And we thought maybe it is, maybe it's not. And so we started to define some universal competency framework. And this is what we have come up with over the years. And the teams are still busy working with these. Because professional competencies, everything that was deemed non-technical was created into or moved into professional competencies. So we thought of re-illustrating these. And as a matter of interest, most of the national bodies, and we're still busy with that research, but we've started to investigate it, have only stipulated meta competencies to a large extent, and as a first order. And they've used second order competencies, which we will explain later after that research comes out. But essentially what we wanted to also have is that we also realized that many of us have been working in silos. So can we have a universal competency that is universally understood between basic education, higher education, early career development, and professional development? We speak the same language. And as a result, we know what we are talking about when we're speaking about competencies. And we can also start to have agreements on what phases should in what phases should we start to develop these competencies and to what level and depth. Now, while all of this is happening, we had, and I just want to speak about one of the drivers, which is AI. And if you look at AI and how it has changed the educational front, it's really changed, for example, how students learn, how we instruct, but it also has some sort of negative and some positive connotations to it. So we have some over-dependency on it by many students. We have some data privacy issues, biasness, and we have experts on the panel who will speak to this. But it's also given us opportunities where students can start to become self-directed. We can have more customized learning, ability to scale and address access issues and so forth. But what it has also done with these many drivers that we've had has also given rise to the development of micro and macro credentials, which one of our speakers will speak about. And that started to change the way we think about our career pathway. So, for example, you could start a micro-credential or a macro-credential when you're in basic education. And if you have a regulated micro-credential, and some national organizations are moving in this direction, is that they're starting to also regulate that, which means that if we have at some stage micro or macro-credentials that speak to engineering competencies, they could backfit into many of these different aspects, which means that you can change careers, you can enter into an engineering pathway at different points in time, and we may start to look at a reform in the educational system. Now, how prepared are we for this? And what type of preparedness do we need? And I like to speak about this diagram because it speaks about bringing together policy, regulation, and accreditation people together with academia, industry, and students, and really informing policy. What we've also seen is there's been a growth in engineering education research, which means research in the engineering education context, which is sometimes very different from general education. There are some similarities, but it is different. And as a result, we need to have policy, regulation, and accreditation informing policy. In the same way, we need to have professional societies and general society also informing policy together with academia, industry, and students. So I'd just like to speak about some of the fundamental changes. In the educational sector, there's been an evolution of how we use different pedagogies. And I'm not going to go through all of that today. But and this has also started to change the way that we think about some of the instructional practices and the design of curriculum in our classroom. So if I want to speak about academic preparedness, which means the preparedness of academia, we may start to see more educational reforms beyond the COVID regime. So how do we recalculate and articulate our curriculums, have flexibility? How do we instruct, prepare assessments? Very important, how do we prepare our students for these new learning strategies? Because they may not have been used to this before. And there's many other aspects. How do we upskill our staff or reskill, get them to unlearn in this new environment? So one of the things that I decided to do in my career, I decided to actually stop my career in academia. One of my mentors said, Yashin, I think there's something you're missing. And I realized later that it was. I could never understand what the researchers in education were writing about. They speak a different language. And we also see that there's a different language between what industry speaks and what academia speaks. And as a result, we also have some conflicts in languages. But just to give you an illustration, I thought I'd go into a program and just say, okay, fine, I'll go into learn about all the learning theories. And then I found out there's so many of them. There's philosophies behind them. And if we have to be experts in learning, it's important for us to understand some levels of details of these as instructors. And we need to have some members of the team that understand this much more deeply. We've also had a number of workshops around these, and we have experts that have done these. And for example, one of them was a workshop I've done around, can active learning actually be bad for your students? And there's been a drive towards adopting active learning, but it doesn't mean that traditional learning or traditional instruction doesn't have a place. It does. And there's also been some misconceptions about the sage in the stage principle. Yes, we have reduced more information sharing, but if you go back to, for example, the guru principle, which means that you need a master who will be able to facilitate learning better, still applies. So, but there are a number of tools in our toolkit of learning that we need to adopt. And people normally speak about the three big ones, which is motivation, attention, and prior knowledge. But awareness is also coming to the fore. So there's many aspects about learning that we need to be upskilled on. And this is one of the reasons that we also have engineering education researchers that are skilled at these issues, and they can also help and guide policymakers, curriculums, and so forth. So if you find a lot of events that we used to run traditionally, you also find that, for example, we spend a lot of our funding on just the learning event, which means the classroom event. But now we need to start to look more holistically at how we develop our educational systems. So my message here is that we need to rethink, especially in undergraduate education, how we combine the faculty competency portfolio. And I think we need to have experts or a portfolio of individuals that have industry expertise, engineering education expertise, engineering education research expertise, as well as specialist academic expertise as we have in the traditional front. And we also need to start to think about how we change the way we assess and reward progression of this team. Because if we don't do that, we will still perpetuate the existing system. We also need to think about industry and how they would restructure learning. We focus a lot on academia, and academia has done a great job in mobilizing and transforming its educational structures. But how do we transform the educational structures in the workplace? Because even workplace learning is starting to change, and very little work is done in this area. So in essence, I just want to leave you with this message that I think we need to be intentional about certain competencies. We need to think about a universal taxonomy so that we have a common language and a common way in which we can apply these taxonomies and even assess ourselves. We need to improve our structures in workplace learning specifically, have an AI framework, and we also need to rethink our faculty competency mix in terms of what, for a for a team to reform and be well placed in today and the future, what will that faculty competency mix look like? And how do we change that? Either through capacity building or bringing in an integrated solution and stopping the silo mentality and getting the team to work together. So with that, that's the end of my message. And I think we would now like to go into the panel discussion. Our moderator for today could not join us. So I have two duties today. So I will start now with the moderation aspect. So thank you very much. So I would now like to just engage in some rules of engagement for the panel session. It's a panel, and we also have some presentation formats from our panelists. And how I'd like this to happen is that if you have any questions, both on the keynote speech or on the panelist discussions, please, if you can indicate that in the chat. And what I would do is that together with the technical support, I will pick that up and we will ask those questions at different points in time. We'd also like to engage with you as the audience at the end of the panel discussion. But for now, if you can place that into the chat if you have any questions, and we'll try to monitor that. Great. Okay, so if I will now introduce the panelists. We have a wide variety of them. And the first panelist is Professor Dawn Bonfield. She's a professor of practice. If we can spotlight her, that would be great. She's a professor of practice in sustainable development at King's College London and the Royal Academy of Engineering visiting professor of inclusive engineering at Aston University. Now, Professor Bonfield has worked in a number of different areas in a variety of different sectors, but she's also currently the president of the Commonwealth Engineering Council, which represent engineers in all the Commonwealth countries, which is a large number of countries, and I'm sure she'll speak more about that. She's also the founder and director of Towards Vision, a nonprofit organization working towards vision and diversity and inclusion. And she's also an executive council member on the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. So she's a very distinguished guest of ours, and I would like to introduce you, Dawn, to provide your presentation and as a panel member. So I would hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yashin. Could you just confirm that you can see the presentation? Yes. And you can hear me? You might have just seen me struggling to get my laptop plugged into the plug here unsuccessfully. So I'm hoping that I've got at least 5 minutes and more on it, then I'll fiddle around in a minute. But in the meantime, yes, hopefully this all works. So just to say thank you very much to Hans and team for all of the amazing webinars that you put on as part of IFEES and GEDC. I really personally value these and come to them as many as I possibly can. And Yashin, I agree with you that most of the time I don't understand the language that's that's in the sort of engineering or education domain, I think. Thanks to you, Yashin, as well for pulling this group together and for inviting me. I've known Yashin for a good number of years, as I have Hans as well. Yashin and I are board members of the Commonwealth Engineers Council, and we know each other through the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, where I am at the moment in Paris celebrating World Engineering Day, which was yesterday. So it is actually World Engineering Day for Sustainable Development. So I'm going to talk more about sustainable development really, and how we are going about creating these change makers, if you like, for a sustainable future. So I've got a short presentation on 3 different levels, not the sort of career pathway that Yashin was talking about, where they're moving from different parts of their education, but this is more of a hierarchy in terms of, I'll speak about the institution that I'm at, the UK-wide sort of skills conversation we're having, and then more around the international conversation that we're having through the Commonwealth Engineers Council, but also here in practically every session that we're at, skills comes up. So yeah, it's totally topical. So on the institution level, I'm at a university in London, 2 universities really. One is King's College London, and the other one is Aston University in Birmingham. And at King's, we've always had a mission actually to create leaders in the service of society. But we're trying to redefine that at the moment to create graduates who come out of King's College London, who have these skills, values and principles around sustainability. And we're trying to embed this sustainability mindset, if you like, across the board with all of our students, including my work in engineering. I'm Professor of Practice in Engineering for Sustainable Development. And we've got these different ways of doing that. So they all start with C. Care is one of them. So care is making students care, finding a way to get students and faculty members to care about these issues, sustainability issues, making sure that they're still at the forefront of their mind. So instilling those values and principles that they can follow. Content is another, making sure that we're providing the content. And the content isn't a sort of one-off content deliverable. There are absolutely packages of content, knowledge that they need to know, but that also changes as they progress through their courses. So that will increase in sort of complexity, if you like, as they go through their education. Confidence is giving them agency and empowerment to go out and act these values when they're not in the university sort of safe setting, when they're in the workplace or they're in their own homes and lives. And then context is setting the holistic environment so that every nudge that they see around them also shows that we are also aligning to the same set of values, so that there isn't that what's the word I'm looking for? Dissonance? Sort of difference between what they see and what we're saying, so that the whole of the university is aligned in the same direction. So that's the plan, if you like. And I just want to remind us of this Sustainable Development Goal 4 and Target 4.7, which is the one that we're aiming at. And if you read through the Target 4.7, it clearly says that education for sustainable development also includes sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and non-violence, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and cultural contribution. So that is a very all-encompassing definition, and one that we try to bear in mind. We have a fund, an education sustainability fund. So we've got some funding that we're funding different programs that are trying different things out in different ways of doing things. So, understanding that we need to know what works and the impact of the things that we're doing. So this just gives a little indication of the types of embedding sustainability work that we're doing. One of the smallest number of projects is evaluating your education for sustainability initiatives. So I think we do need to understand that needs to grow, so that we're making sure that we're doing things that actually work. And I'm at King's I've been there for 3 years as a Royal Society entrepreneur in residence. So trying to help engineers with their entrepreneurship skills towards sustainable development. And I run a competition. This is it, and it's called Eureka, and it's an annual competition where they have a cash prize, and they're just encouraged to come up with ideas. They can be big or small. It can be the ideas that they've had in their group projects. It can be anything at all. So they've just got to pitch in to this competition. It's just a way of getting them to think in a way that is that shows that they're change makers themselves, and they can take action, and they are empowered to do things themselves. So, I mean, it's a small thing, but it's one of those things that aligns them in the same direction. So just going on then to the UK level, I'm involved. I'm a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and we've got a programme called Engineers 2030, which is looking at future skills for engineers. And just like you said, Yashin, in your keynote, we have absolutely seen a sort of drift away from the technical competencies into these areas more of professional competencies. And I think our Engineers 2030 group were absolutely all aligned in setting these as the priorities that we had for our future engineers. But when we've tested this out with our colleagues, I think our colleagues have sort of wondered where the engineering is in this plan. And I think, yeah, we've had that sort of come back to us on a number of fronts. You know, well, this doesn't look like engineering to me. Where are the technical competencies? So it's quite interesting to see that is a sort of shift that we have seen in other places as well. We're just about to publish this as the principle, I suppose, of future engineers. Funnily enough, it has aligned itself around the people, planet, and prosperity of the Sustainable Development Goals, even though we hadn't intended that when we came up with these 6 defining principles. We understand, you know, this work has been driven by the fact that we are in a climate, you know, a crisis situation on so many fronts. You can see them stacking up there in this picture that no doubt you've seen before with, you know, artificial intelligence, the sort of, is it a grey cloud or is it, you know, the sunshine? It's difficult to know, isn't it? But it's a real juncture at the moment. But these things show us that we're in an absolute crisis, and we have recognized that we need a very different type of engineer to get us from the top of this carbon emissions curve, if you like, where we've had a very different set of requirements and drivers to get us to where we are now, and it's a very different type of person that will get us to the bottom, to that sort of net zero by 2050. I wonder, Yashin, if materials engineering is not that at the very bottom of your triangle where you put civil engineering. When you look at the different sort of stages of humankind, you know, materials are very key early on in our human development. So just going then on to the international level, this is my last slide. I think I'm working in the Commonwealth Engineers Council, but also here at the World Federation of Engineering Organisations on this kind of understanding the capacity, that defining and understanding where that capacity sits across the world, and trying to benchmark that capacity and look at where we have gaps and where we have shortfalls of skills, if you like. Because we know that there's a lot of development finance that will help countries, especially developing countries, with climate resilience. And oftentimes what we see happening is that local engineers are not employed in those projects because oftentimes they don't have the accredited skills and competencies to be able to work on, to pass the due diligence, if you like, to be able to work on those international finance projects. So, you know, this is really key that we get to a level where we're talking about the same thing and we're educating engineers to the same standards so that they can be mobile and have that mutual recognition. So that's it from me. That's just a very quick plug for the Engineering Education for Sustainable Development Conference at King's in June of this year. Thank you, Yashin. That's me, and my computer has thankfully lasted.
Thank you so much, Dawn. I see that we are getting some questions on the chat, but so maybe if you have questions for Dawn, if you can also just illustrate that on the chat. What we will do is after the first two presenters, we'll engage with them a little bit. So Dawn, I'm thinking maybe now I should probably hand over to Ibukun, and then we will ask both of you a few questions, if that's in order. All right. So let me introduce Dr. Ibukun Osunbunmi, and he's really our specialist here representing AI. And I see there's a lot of questions on AI. So panelists, also feel free if you want to respond to some questions, if you have some time to respond to them on the chat. But so he's an assistant professor at the Leonard Center within the College of Engineering at Penn State University. He's also an affiliate faculty for Penn State Center for Socially Responsible Artificial Intelligence. Now, a little bit about Dr. Ibukun. He also is an executive member of the Africa Engineering Education Diaspora, which plays a significant role in terms of research initiatives, both here in the US and also supporting contextual aspects back in Africa. And he's developed a number of workshops in AI and how to use AI in education, as well as within the engineering research environment. He's also an engineering education researcher. So with those few words, Dr. Ibukun, if you could present on your topic area. Thank you. I went off script, so if you didn't mind, that's okay.
Yeah, that looks great. And thank you that covers everything. Thank you for the introduction. I just want to confirm the technology to make sure we are seeing my slide. So is it the slide that is showing up here?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. I'll be building on what my colleagues has been talking about, Dr. Yashin and Dr. Dunn, but how I'll be looking into the area of AI in engineering education and what that really means for us today. Like Yashin said, I work here at the Learning Center, and I also represent the AEF diaspora. And part of the things that I do, really, I do a lot of things, but primarily one of the things I focus on is to lead the generative artificial intelligence effort at the Learning Center for the Enhancement of Engineering Education, and also on the African Engineering Education Fellows in the diaspora. I do a lot of workshops, like Yakin said. I do a lot of ongoing research. I have close to 7 papers that are under reviews on artificial intelligence and how that can inform our engineering curriculum and classes on different levels. And other than that, so these are the other things that I do. If time permits me, I will talk more about it, but I do it through the platform of the AEF and also from the Learning Center for the Enhancement of Education here at Penn State University. And I cannot agree more with Yashin on the role of developing the skill sets, how to make our engineering faculty, speak the language of education and see how we move forward on that. So we're coming on the perspective side. There are 4 big things. There are a lot of things we could look into, but looking at the time that I have, I'll be speaking on just 4 big areas. I think it's very important that policy is passed when it comes to literacy and equity in engineering education. Policies on data privacy protection, safeguarding and empowering the workforce, and also sustainability and energy efficiency. I think these are 4 big areas. It's more than that, but they are high-level areas. I think that it needs higher attention for us. I'm going to spend more time speaking on the first one and the second one, and then I'm going to rush to the last 2, because the first 2 seems to be kind of very important, that policies, have to be passed in that area. And I'm also aware of some of the policies already that are passed by UNESCO on ethical guidelines, that are passed by the United States and other countries also in the world too. The very first that I want to talk about is there is a need for us to pass policy on AI literacy, accessibility, and inclusivity that can move us closer to the SDG goals of quality education. I also know that Don spoke on that during our conversation. And one of the things that is very, very important, and that's very important when it comes to this, is AI has the possibility of bridging the gap, and it also has the possibility of increasing the gap. Part of the things that we need to pass policy on is we need, responsible and ethical guidance on how to use AI. There should be guidance on that. There should be policies on that. It's not something that I think faculty on their own should be navigating, or the students on their own should be navigating. I think that both on the institutional, on the world level, and on the national level, we should have some kind of guidance on that. And I do know that UNESCO have something of that, but I think more awareness of such policies are also very, very important. I think one of the direction that AI is going to have on us is really what engineering is in the next 10 years. The context is going to be the same, but how we do engineering is going to be different. So we need to reimagine how pedagogy and assessment looks like, and reimagine what is engineering education in this intelligence age. What is mechanical engineering in this intelligence age? It cannot be mechanical engineering like usual. It cannot be electrical engineering like usual. Something has to be changed. It has to become mechanical engineering with artificial intelligence. And just like my colleagues have spoken, Don spoke about it, Dr. Yasin also spoke about it. One of the things that is really happening is that we have a situation whereby we have experts in the field. They are, experts in the traditional field, experts, whether it is industrial engineering, whether it's mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, all kinds of engineering fields that we have a lot of them. But the problem that we have here is that the experts in the field are not necessarily experts when it comes to pedagogy and when it comes to assessment, when it comes to learning, how students learn, what makes for effective teaching. And we have come to a space where AI policy is, over the years, we've kind of find how it landed, and everybody worked with that template. But we have come to a situation whereby AI is evolving how we learn and how we teach. So we have engineer faculties who are experts in the field, but necessarily do not have an expertise in the science behind how does learning works? How does the human brain works? How do we integrate technology effectively into the classroom? So these are bigger questions that we need to pass policy on. There's a need to pass policy on professional or faculty development of faculty so that we could look into some of those things. Academic integrity issues is on a rise. It's not something new. It's been things that's been done in the ages. But right now with AI, there is access to resources. So one thing I would say that we need to pass policy on, what does that look like? What does academic integrity looks like in the age of AI? One of the things I tell faculty at Penn State is, if you teach the same way you're teaching in the past, and you're seeing that academic integrity issues is increasing, probably I understand that probably the students have some they have responsibility to be responsible to do that, not to do that. But I'm also questioning you as a faculty if you are not moving forward. So the same thing you taught 5 years ago, now AI can answer it in a split second. And that's the same thing you're teaching right now, and you're saying that academic integrity issues. So these are issues that we need a holistic and a system level approach to really look at. How do we really define academic integrity? What is academic integrity issues in the age of AI, and what constitutes for that? And I know that different universities, policies, I've read a lot of them as looking into that. One of the things that we also need to pass policy on, X84 talks about inclusive engineering education inclusive engineering education. But I submitted a paper recently, and probably if I have the time, I could talk about it later on. And I was looking at bridging the engineering education divide, and I was looking at, is AI perpetuating the divide, or is it reducing the gap? We went through close to 2,000 to 3,000 papers, and then finally we have up to 500 papers, that made it into the final loop that we're looking into. I believe you mean Oceania and Africa, only 1 or 2 papers came out from that continent. And then, North America and the Asian country are leading in the space. So you discover that whereas AI has the possibility to decrease the gap, what literature is saying, and not just what I've read, what I've also looked into, seems to say that the gap is widening. We need to pass policy on this if we are going to move closer to the sustainable development goals and not to move further away from it. I have to move on because of time. I could keep talking on this for the next 1 hour.
Yeah. So we will definitely ask you a few questions. So maybe if you can conclude with this slide.
All right. Yes, it's important that we pass. It's important that we pass policies on data representation. The students, users should have control over what data is used by the AI systems. And then the AI system that we use, the AI tools that we use, should offer some sort of data protection. People need to know what's their data used for. The current AI that is developed mostly are developed on the northern hemisphere data spheres. Most of the global south are left out, and this further perpetuates bias and unfairness, towards perpetuate biasness in the data. We need to pass policy that looks into global data representation, We need to pass policy that will mitigate bias and fairness. We also need to pass policy that has to do with regulatory compliance of these AI tools. AI tools cannot keep breaking into people's copyright and all of those things like that. What does copyright looks like in the age of AI? These are bigger conversations we should have. And then we have workforce development. And then we also have sustainability and energy efficiency. AI runs on a lot of energy. We need to talk about energy optimization. We need to talk about AI environmental audit. We cannot just allow AI companies, industry to destroy our environment without replenishing it. So these are big things that we really need to look like. And then I will just end it here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I just had a request that it may be better for us to just conclude with the last two presentations, which should take us about 10 minutes, and then rather go through the questions and answers, because there seems to be some consolidation of those. So for now, if you can continue to post your questions and answer your questions or comments on the chat, and we will consolidate them. So our next speaker that I would like to invite is Professor Didier Nyembwe, and he'll be speaking to us around continuing professional development and the era of micro-credentials and how that impacts the educational system. He currently serves as the head of Department of Mechanical and Mechatronics Engineering at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, and he served in many other positions before, such as Vice Dean of Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Engineering. He actually, for an equivalent national body, used to chair the committee that deals with accreditation, more specifically for engineering education institutions and high institutions. And he is an expert on continuing professional development, developing policies around it, and regulatory matters. So with those few words, Professor Didier Nyembwe, if you could kindly share your presentation, and welcome. We currently cannot hear you.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon from the time here in South Africa. Thank you. I prepared a few slides just to set up the scene for the rest of the discussion, and just highlight and outline some of the things that are occupying us, at least when it comes to the Engineering Council of South Africa here, which has gone through a number of changes with regard to continuing professional development. So I am positioning my short intervention along the axis of the engineering practitioner life cycle. And in this case, we're looking beyond graduation. Once the graduate has entered the world of work, and mainly after the registration as a professional. As you know, in our case here, professional registration has become compulsory for practicing as an engineer, including working as an academic, at least in engineering faculty. So in order to maintain your status of registration, you will have to be involved with lifelong learning, and the subset of it being continuing professional development. So there is eventually that, first of all, it is important that we stress again the benefit and the importance of continuous professional development to update your skills and knowledge, its importance when it comes to enhancing your career and employability, as well as anything to do with professional growth. Now, when you look at the context and the space of CPT, eventually micro-credential offer an opportunity for innovation. They are relatively new in the context of the Engineering Council of South Africa. And some of the role that we anticipate they will play include their nature when it comes to the flexibility in learning and skill acquisition, the fact that they are tailor-made to specific skills and competencies, that they enhance employability, they are cost-effective, and they allow to rapidly and effectively deal with a very dynamic environment where we are talking about multidisciplinary fields. Some of them have been mentioned here at the moment I joined. I heard things about Sustainable Development Goals, and the last speaker were talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Once you start talking about the micro-credential and bringing them closely to the environment of continuing professional development, there will be eventually a need for oversight and regulation by professional body. And that's where we have done quite a bit of work, at least with the Engineering Council of South Africa, to see how regulation, policies and strategy can impact on these new type of instrument, especially when it comes to the quality, mutual recognition, the issue of portability, and the issue of mobility of engineers. That's one area, and always underpinning the kind of policy and strategy. The Engineering Council of South Africa went through the development of an entire new framework, and the exercise included a comprehensive need analysis of identification of skills and competencies, collaboration with a range of stakeholders, including the industry, issues of quality assurance, and probably that's what I thought will be important in that we have developed an entire new framework with a new standard, as well as gazetted rules related to continued professional development and the learning activities. And we are looking at the present moment at how we can implement that through technology innovation and integration, as well as continuous improvement through audits that the Council is regularly conducted in all the role players and people who are involved in continuing professional development in the country. This is just a diagram depicting the framework where, for the first time, issues of role players and people involved with continuing professional development is defined and clarified with their responsibilities, with issues of delegation of authorities, the kind of activities that are involved at the different level of the role players, and the issues of qualities and standards related to the type of learning activity. I hope that when we have the discussion, I will be able to elaborate a little bit about that. We believe that micro-credential has got a very important future, especially in the realm of continuing professional development in addressing the skills gap. Very important here to resolve the issue of unemployment that we have. The future lies also in issues of increased accessibility, the integration with traditional universities or traditional education offered through universities, how they complement and can complement the kind of offering that traditional academic institution offer. We feel that there is some additional work that can be done with regard to security, transparency of this credential. We are at the present moment looking at issue of blockchain technology. It was nice to hear the colleague talking about artificial intelligence that now. And through micro-credential, there is eventually an opportunity for collaboration of professional bodies and supporting the kind of initiatives that we have on the African continent for mutual recognition and harmonization. I've thrown a bunch of work there, but it's just a way of setting up the scene for discussion that will follow now. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. So we'll now have our final panelist, which is Professor Jamie Gurgenas. She's a teaching assistant professor in the Engineering and Computing Education program and associate director of the STEM Edge research in the College of Engineering and Information Technology at UMBC. She's also led a number of different areas in the teaching and learning environment, most specifically directing the Center for the Integration of Research, Teaching and Learning. And beyond that, she's also an expert on global competencies and global competency development, also running programs that encompasses a variety of different countries and students from different parts of the world. Most of the portfolios of our panelists are on the link, and you can read more about them. But with that, Dr. Jamie, we would like to introduce you for this presentation and also some engagement that you would do with the colleagues at the end. So thank you for that. And after that, we will engage with the open discussion. And we should conclude in the next 30 to 35 minutes.
All right. Can you see my presentation and can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, good morning from the United States of America in Baltimore, Maryland. As you can see, I have this fabulous group of students because my love is really for the development and truly getting our students to be just what we need today. And oh, by the way, if you want to turn your cameras, trust me, I have no shame. I love seeing people when I talk to you because, man, it is tough talking to a bunch of screens. I always tell my students it's a professional practice, so please show me yourself. I would love to see your beautiful background. Look, that's a Paul Reed Smith guitar. It's a beautiful, beautiful guitar. If you're interested in manufacturing, it's amazing. So turn on your cameras if you can. And because I love to see you all. Oh, look at that. Hi. And so these are some of my students who are, by the way, she's an assistant professor now. And I have them, they basically, we love a lot of sense of humor in Baltimore. So they can stay behind the glass. But yeah, we're just a lot of fun. But I just want to emphasize this aspect of the need for universal engineering taxonomy. And I promise I'll try to make sure this is brief. But the fact is that all of you bring something to the table, and we don't really do a great job of meeting the needs of translating that. There's this delay in research. There's this aspect of curriculum development. We're talking about, all my colleagues had this robust presentation, but we really need to be able to take that. US is doing something, India is doing it. All of you just have all this rich curriculum and this rich understanding, but we need to try to harmonize that. So I'm going to talk about an example of that. But I would love to be able to collaborate with all of you. And I have these wonderful colleagues up here that I represent from Brazil, Portugal, from Germany. But it's understanding that and I have dealt with these challenges, that they have something that's different and we need to harmonize our different practices. So that's why we need this taxonomy, to be able to provide a space, a safe and thriving space around the alignment of our priorities, and so that we can actually make more work happen, more good work happen. So with that being said, how do we do that? So I'm going to highlight this aspect of global competence. And maybe all of you, anybody in the room, like really just investing into, really interested in global competence. If so, you can put it in the chat. I'm all about loving and learning the different cultural competencies and global competencies of my amazing friends, whether it be from Germany, from Brazil, from Australia, from Japan. It's just so cool. And honestly, we have so much to learn from each other. So this is an example that I'm going to provide to you of global competency and how, more or less, why this universal engineering taxonomy, it's really, really important to be able to meet the needs of one of the things of all of our sustainable goals and also even our grand challenges. So that need for global competence. Well, all of you know what ABET is. I'm sure you're so enthralled and endowed in it, and is like being in the ocean of it. ABET is like the thing at UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We are an R1 minority serving institution, and all of our programs are ABET accredited. So our students can go off and do and be a part of lots of different engineering possibilities, which is great. It's a great way to really talk about it. But the thing about ABET is that, and so your sustainable goals and our grand challenges, is that they highlight this aspect of global and cultural competency, but we are not doing a great job of necessarily elevating that in our programming, especially in engineering. And I appreciate what Don was showing earlier, my colleague, who was talking about that the engineer doesn't look like the engineer today. My father was a Bethlehem Steel man who went to college, an engineering college in the 70s. And he's not the and as much as I love him and I miss him, that is not the engineer of today. And those engineers look very, very different. So I appreciate Don showing that, and all my colleagues kind of had a lacing and theme of that. So we need to, I'm already at almost 5 minutes. We need to think about how we collaborate with people, and there's a call to reflect on all these different premises, to view ourselves and to really integrate these SDGs, because we need to really cultivate that exchange. How we do this? Well, you probably are familiar with this, but you're doing it probably through this aspect of study abroad or faculty coming to your universities. But the problem is there's a lot of inhibitors. How many have families? How many of you have aspects of workload, financial resources that you need, right? We can't provide and have the time to just leave and stay in a country. So how do we fix that? How do we change and be able to do? And what we're doing right now is a great example of that. We just don't have the ability to do that. So one of the ways, and Yashin will ask me more questions about this, is this aspect of collaborative online international learning. At the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, we've done a really big push to do a lot more internationalization or harmonizing with our institutions and really partnering with people like yourselves to really bolster that relationship. So I have a global engineering class that takes this methodology and does this internationalization approach. What it is that my students are actually working with peers from Germany, Portugal, Brazil, and building and talking about building and creating words are hard. Being able to work with each other in a multidisciplinary facet, transdisciplinary research, and they're also building appropriate technologies and utilizing and really honing in, especially as it relates to those aspects of understanding each other's cultures and the global, and be able to set those parameters and be able to respect each other and actually build a technology. And so they're doing this right now. In fact, we had it last semester, and there's more research coming out about it. showing that they're actually increasing their global competencies and also their cultural perspectives. So that was very, very fast and brief, but we'll get into it more later. So Yashin, I do have a question for you that you must answer. Not must, but I do ask that you answer. And it is a qualitative question. So now that I've kind of briefly discussed this aspect of a universal taxonomy and the need, as I said, my class is doing this. We're doing this at the University of Maryland, pushing and also training our faculty in global competence, by the way. We actually have a whole workshop. My colleague, Steve McAlpine's on here. He's a part of that as well. And we're different disciplines. He's in INDS, I'm in engineering, but we're learning to enhance our global competence. So what I'm going to ask you is, if you would you mind answering this question is, how does a universal taxonomy add value to educational programs? And what gaps in existing frameworks should address to enhance their effectiveness? So what do you feel, and maybe you have this in your program, and you're welcome to, so I'm asking if you wouldn't mind responding to this question. Again, you use the QR code. I can put the link in the chat. It's the same one from before. It should bring you there. I believe, I hope. Technology is a wonderful thing. So how does universal taxonomy add value to do you think in your educational program? And do you have gaps in your existing frameworks? And Yash put in but it would allow us to strengthen our EER. Yeah, absolutely. I like that too. And we really need to help strengthen our own curriculums. It doesn't necessarily have to look the same, but we could have universal terms. Ooh, cross-disciplinary. Yep. Better communication. And yeah, by the way, you can just skip for now. You don't have to like add your name or anything. Yep, go ahead.
So thank you very much for that, Jamie. I think while the colleagues are busy with this, I would like us to maybe go into the question and answer session. So we may, I know we budgeted about 90 minutes for the initial program, and then we extended it to 2 hours, but I would really like us to conclude this in the next maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So if our colleagues can continue answering this question, and here we're speaking about the universal taxonomy, which means should we have a universal taxonomy that displays the engineering competency in various ways. So with that, I have a few questions to the panelists. So it'd be great if the technical support could spotlight our panelists. And I think the first few questions are around sustainability competencies and maybe global competencies. So I see some questions so if our panelists could answer this question, is that what are the challenges that we foresee in implementing sustainability competencies and global competencies in engineering education, both in industry and in the undergraduate system? So I'm not sure who would like to take that one.
Sorry, Yashin, would you mind repeating the question?
Okay. What are the challenges that we could face when we implement both sustainability competencies and global competencies in undergraduate education or in industry? I see, Don, you probably want to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I took myself off mute just in case. The challenges I see at our university are with faculty, other faculty members sometimes. I think we're quite a small group who work on this, both at the university level and within the national level as well, who are all committed and all aligned in the same way. But I think that is actually quite a small percentage of the number of faculty members that are out there in delivering engineering education, and trying to get them to also care about it and to embed these principles into their modules, which are often, very technical, and they will say, well, it's something to do with my module. I teach fluid dynamics. It's nothing to do with me. So yeah, translating the relevance for it to everybody and getting them to also care enough to embed it in their modules. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I see, I think. And just keeping the attention on these topics, you know, the value-led competencies, if you like, are absolutely being undermined day by day at the moment. And so just keeping them at the top of the priority list, or redefining them in a way that they are at the top of the priority list, I think.
And maybe just as a follow-up, because you spoke about some opportunities, and maybe I could ask the second question as well, and if others want to ask both or answer both the challenges and opportunities. But what are the opportunities or the benefits of having these competencies? And should we only highlight them to the undergraduate system, or should we also highlight them to industry?
For me, I think they're base competencies. They're like, you know, they underpin everything, don't they? They're not negotiable. They're imperatives, I think. You know, in the same way that we now all appreciate safety as being a base competency for us in engineering. You know, this is the same with ethics, isn't it? Inclusion, sustainability, these value-led competencies are an absolute, you know, non-negotiable part of who we are as an engineer, in my opinion. So you know, it's not so much a benefit, it's an imperative, because we live in the world we live in, and for sustainability, we cannot get away from the fact that we need to be sustainable in everything we do. So yeah, that's the massive value, I suppose, opportunity of it.
Okay, that's great. I see, Jamie, you've also unmuted. So if you can maybe discuss the challenges and opportunities, if you would like to.
Yeah, I mean, I firsthand see the opportunities. I mean, my students just cultivate this unique relationship with each other that is now in undergrad, which I think back to my time in schooling, I never had that opportunity in a live setting, sitting in a classroom, literally engaging and now harmonizing with peers that are across, you know, not even in my country. But to also value and appreciate and to start thinking about how what they've been designing and putting that into their own product development, respecting the time zones, respecting their culture. I think that there's just an immense amount of value there, just even if we can bring it down into our, not only to our higher education, but our P12, some say K-12, I talk about pre-kindergarten 12, that's really going to cultivate what we're looking for as that engineer of not just 20, you know, just for the future, but today of what we need, right? But the challenges, yes, I also deal with my own challenges of being able to, like, my German colleagues and my Brazilian colleagues and my Portuguese, they all have different semesters. We all have different ways of grading, ways of how we say this is a passing grade versus non-passing grade. What does it mean to develop? And if we could have that intentional conversations and development of a universal framework, I believe that now we can start building even bigger programming and maybe even certifications. And as my expert colleague about micro-credentialing, I think these are invaluable for us to be able to easily go back and forth and be able to work in our different spaces. I love to see that happening. And it's really, really thriving. I will say, even I have students that still talk to their Brazilian colleagues to this day in Portuguese, and they visit each other. So it's really kind of cool.
Thank you. I see a lot of questions around AI. I don't know whether I should ask the difficult ones first, but anyway. So maybe just very broadly, so what are some of the challenges of adopting AI in the educational system? That is maybe the question I would like to firstly ask, and then maybe the next question. I'll pick that up as I move along through the question. So I'm not sure if you want to take that, Ibukun. So what are the opportunities and challenges in terms of implementing AI in the educational system? Maybe some of the big talking points.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I think let me start with the opportunity first, and then I will talk about the challenges. I remember the article by Bloom in 1985, 2000, that was like 40 years ago, talking about the talking about how one-on-one tutoring can move students by 2 standard deviation. I could share my screen to show us that, which means that if people have one-on-one tutoring, if what that means that they could move from being an average to very good or excellent student. And then if they have one-on-one tutoring, they could move from below average to above average students. And that was what the article was talked about. And so the question then 40 years ago is, how do we have one-on-one tutoring when we have a lot of students to one faculty? But I think that AI just answered that answer. Every student have a tutor with him, with her, or wherever they are, irrespective of wherever they are in the country. That is a big leap for us. And that's a big opportunity that AI really gives to everybody. And that's a very, very big one. I could keep talking on that, but let me leave it at that. And it also means that every faculty also have a personalized instructional designer that can help you redesign your course as you move forward. Of course, you have to have some AI literacy to be able to do that, and it's the advantage is enormous. For the challenges, I think one of the big challenges that we're going to have is, the conversation before is, should we use AI or not? I think that was 2 years ago. Right now, I think almost everybody in the academia has agreed that AI has come to stay. We have to use it. But I think one of the big questions people are asking is, how do I use AI? When do I not use AI? Does AI really impact learning, or is it just a facade that will come and go? So, and then there's the challenge of academic integrity issues on the rise. There's a challenge of ethical issues that are on the rise, and all of those things like that. I think, but all of these challenges are not something that we cannot solve. They're not challenges that we cannot mitigate in the sense of that. So I think that these challenges also provide for us a space where we can come together and have conversation on how we could move forward with how we could summon the challenges that has come for it. Yeah.
So I'm probably going to ask one of the more difficult questions that are on the chat. Will the present colleagues or academic colleagues disappear? This is I'm just going to read it verbatim. With the inclusion of AI and technology?
I don't think so. And I also leave space to other members of my panel to talk to. I don't think so. I think what is going to happen, let me first start on the personal level, and then before we go into the system level, I think what is really, really going to happen is that we're going to have some sort of job displacement, but it is going to be more of people who have AI skills, faculty who have AI skills, industry experts who have AI skills. We replace those who do not have as the time goes on. And I don't see that even happening in the next 5 or 10 years. That's on the personal level. On the system and decisional level, I think the AI is not going to displace higher institution, as it were, because higher institution, part of the things, primary goal of higher institution is to develop lifelong learners and those who have capacity for lifelong learning, and also to how you think and how you approach things and understanding the context of mechanical engineering. People still to know the things that work, the things that don't work, the context of their discipline, and all of those things like that. So I don't see that going anywhere. What I see happening is it's not going to be mechanical engineering as usual. I'm sorry if I'm using mechanical engineering. It's because I have my master's and my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. So that comes very first to my mind. So it's not going to be mechanical engineering like it is. It's going to be mechanical engineering with AI. It's going to mean, teaching and learning mechanical engineering with AI. So what that is going to look like is what we need to pass policy on, is what we need to have roundtable conversation on, and also to other disciplines. I don't think AI would dismiss or displace. It's going to enhance it. It may not be the best allegory, just like calculators did not displace mathematics, but they had to remodel the mathematics curriculum so that people are given a higher level of activities, of academic tasks. The same way AI is going to redefine what we teach, how we teach, and probably at a higher level of Bloom taxonomy. So it's not going to go anywhere.
Okay, perfect. I would like to maybe ask one question here to Professor Nyembwe. With the introduction and regulation of micro or macro credentials, how do you foresee that changing the undergraduate education system, if at all any?
Yeah, what we are thinking of is the fact that micro-credential actually will complement higher education learning. Instead of appearing initially as a threat, but rather something that higher education learning will embrace to strengthen employability and marketability of our graduates. That's the way we are looking at this micro-credential. In fact, we have witnessed a trend where a lot of universities are now integrating micro-credential as stackable module that facilitate a learning pathway, and as well as success towards a qualification, in that they allow flexibility as well as aligning with the development need of the student. So contrary to what some people may think, our view at the present moment is that micro-credentials are something to embrace as a way of complementing the offering of traditional academic institutions. That's my response at this stage. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we hand over to the closing, I will just take one question from the panel. But before that, if we can ask Dr. Jamie, if you could reshare the poll. We would like to see from the audience whether you have rethought about your view on policy, and if you could conclude that with us now. I see Engineer Martin's hand is up. He'll probably be going into a meeting very shortly. He's in the UN buildings. So if you can kindly complete this poll, we just want to see whether your views around these aspects have changed. So it'll be great if you can take out your phones, and if we can have all of you respond, that would be really great. So we'll allow a minute for the response. And while we are having the response, I'm going to answer one question and then hand over to Engineer Martin to do the closing. So the one question that I had here was how would and can we build support systems for tenure for interdisciplinary EER engineering education research faculty? Panelists, would any one of you want to take that question, or would you like me to do that? In the meantime, if our colleagues and audience can kindly fill in the poll, the QR code is on there. Perfect.
I also included it the link. Can you repeat the question slowly? I was like distracted.
Okay. How would and can we build support systems for tenure for interdisciplinary EER faculty?
I think, if that's a question for the panelists, I think one of the things I would like to start to engage, which is the fact that we need to value our EER representatives' expertise a lot more, no different than any other traditional faculty. I like my colleague, I have 3 degrees in mechanical engineering, And as an engineering educational researcher, it's very unconventional. And the value of understanding how people learn, the way we develop curriculum, the way we do it with an inclusive mindset. The fact is that if we're trying to meet specific goals and values, without these people being able to help understand what's it mean not only to develop faculty in this, but also our students, there's multiple stakeholders here. And really, we need to be bringing those people to the table. So it would be great if administrators and presidents and deans and chancellors would start to really bring to value and see the value of EER faculty and really put them in at the table now. And to me, that's just going to have to be a push, and maybe it's going to hurt a little, but I think it's a really important push to ensure that we have the engineer of today, what we need today.
Okay, thank you. Engineer Martin, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. A very good afternoon. Yeah, good day to everybody.
So, Engineer Martin, if I can just answer this question, and I'll hand over to you to conclude. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. So, maybe just to respond to this, I think we are going to see as we go into more of educational reforms, those institutions that will succeed will be able to best leverage an integrated portfolio of resources. And these resources would include some traditionally based academics, will include resources which have industry experience, which include resources that have educational specialists experience and engineering education research experience. And we're starting to see more of that being integrated in various systems around the world to bring in those expertise to have a complementary faculty that can best deliver on the new educational reform. Now, in the way that we take this forward, and I think as the recognition for these integrated views and perspectives grow, they also will have similar roles, but some of them will be different. So the way that we manage tenure and the way that we manage how we assess and review this integrated faculty or different aspects of the faculty will start to change in different forms. And some universities have already done that. They've highlighted different percentages to what they can do and how they would contribute to faculty. But having them working together is important. And also getting the mix and the acceptance that we need these views. For example, if you are a specialist in engineering, let's just say in power engineering, and you need to use a power type of engineering simulator or tool, you need to be an expert in power engineering for you to be able to understand the complexities in you using that tool and what benefits and how to use that tool. In the same way, in a learning environment, you need experts who understand learning very well. So when we have AI and AI learning tools, they'll be able to advise and to be able to use in the context of learning. Furthermore, we also need to capacitate existing staff on some of these AI tools. So there was a question about will AI replace, in instruction. I think, as my head of department here would say, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that I think we should be more concerned, not really about whether AI will be replacing our jobs, but we would definitely we should be more concerned about people who know how to use AI replacing those that don't. And it means that we have to capacitate our current staff about that. So with that is my final comments, and I would like to hand over to Engineer Martin Manua. He's in the UN buildings today together with Dawn, and he's come out of some of the sessions on World Engineering Day, and there's many resolutions with ambassadors and so forth. And Engineer Martin, he's the Vice President of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, and he's been past presidents of many organizations in engineering and well-known around the world and in the African continent in particular. So with that, Engineer Martin, I would hand over to you for the resolutions and closing. If you'd like to contact any one of us, I will post my email on the chat, and we'll also, if there's any follow-up questions, we can introduce you to the panelists at some point in time. So with that, thank you very much. And thank you, panelists.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yashin. And congratulations to all the delegates and presenters for such a fantastic webinar. Engineering education is now very key to the transformation of our continent and global achievements is, say, Africa. But globally, engineering education is now the parameter which will achieve the SDGs. It's now the hope that we have that the new engineer will have the right toolkits, the right technological aptitude. I know there's this threat of AI, but what we can say is we just need to retool and apply artificial intelligence for the benefit of engineering education. We from the World Federation would like to congratulate you and would really want a set of your regulations so that we can present them tomorrow in my report to the Executive Council. We are eager and willing to work with you so that we achieve the transformative forces in engineering education. Engineering is the force that we will use to develop. It is basically where all the solutions to mankind's challenges and problems come from. And there is none other than engineering educators themselves that can bring this fundamental change. There is now need for you to reimagine, rethink, and recreate engineering education through questioning the existing taxonomies of the proficiencies, skills, attributes, and competencies so that they embrace modern technology. They embrace intercultural intelligence, social and emotional intelligence, and ensure that we create a full-rounded problem solver. This is now time to revisit the global attributes and proficiency tenses by the IEA and everybody else and align them to the next normal, to the new realities. So I'm looking forward to be receiving from the chair all your resolutions so that we can endorse them at the World Federation and then make sure the whole world implement them through our 5 regions, through our international members. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Martin. I'm not sure if we have Professor Hans Heuer here, if he wants to say any closing. The panelists, if you could remain for a short while, but if not, we could catch up later, and then we would conclude. So, Professor Hans Heuer, over to you if you would like to say any closing. Thank you so much.
Thank you kindly. This was an inspiring, thoughtful presentation, and I'm very, very happy that although it has lasted longer than our webinars do of 1 hour, 2/3 of all the participants, a large number, stayed until the end. I know some had to go and teach classes and all that, but I'm impressed by the community, global community that we together have built and will strengthen moving forward, both representing IFEES, GEDC, and IUCEE. And also, my dear brother, you and I are working also very closely with the UNESCO, as you know, colleagues in China, ICEE. And so we have a lot of networks, obviously, in Africa and other parts of the world. So I'm deeply committed to support you in creative ways in very challenging, difficult times in many countries. And building, I think, to me, having these dialogues, building primarily relationships of trust as we move forward in dealing with these complex issues here. Again, thank you for joining us. Our speakers, very, very thoughtful, and we have recorded this particular session today, and we'll also share that. Peace be with all of you. Thank you kindly.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Panelists, if you can just hold on for about 5 minutes, I would just like to capture, could one of you just capture a picture of us on the main screen? That would be really good. Ibukun, could you do that? I'm struggling to do that. That would be great.
Yeah, sure, I can. I will just wait for everybody to be out of the screen, right?
It is okay. We will have mechanisms to do that.
Okay. So panelists, can we have our videos on so I could capture us all?
Dear Sridhar, if we could see you also, that would be wonderful. I value our partnership with you. I don't know if you can hear me.
I mean, if the other colleagues want to switch on the cameras, we could also take a screenshot of whoever we can see on the screen.
And Jessica, I don't know if you're still there.
Hans, we can only see half of your face, really.
Okay,
So
let me come.
that's better. That's better. Yeah.
Thank you, dear Dawn.
Still waiting for people to leave off. So
It's okay for now, Ibukun. Sridhar, could you go into focus mode and maybe take a screenshot?
Yeah. Alternatively, if all these panelists can be focused and everybody here, because what I'm seeing here is 4 of us are focused and few people are just small pictures. So I want to make sure everybody is super focused.
Is it better now?
No. I think the initial one is better.
Okay, let's revert back. Technical support. We apologize. We're taking quite some time, so we just revert back. Okay, Ibukun, I think take out whatever you can see. As long as you have us on the screen, we are good.
I told my TA to open up the door for class, so you're fine. Luckily, I live 5 minutes. I was like, we're going to go over.
So I'm going to drop in the chat what I screenshot. I don't know if this is good.
Perfect.
But if we need to do another one, we can do it.
It should be fine. Let's do one more, and then we close. We can only hold our smiles for so long.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know where.
Is it possible somebody pins everybody, like pin everybody? So if we can pin, let me see. Okay, I'm doing that. Everybody.
Pin all of us, and then do it that way.
It's going to be bigger. So people I have on my screen now is Yashi, Jamie, Wembe, Dawn, and Han. Am I missing out on anybody? Who else should I pin?
You can ping Martin and Inyemwe.
Martin and Inyemwe, can you spell?
Nyembwe.
Okay, it's pinned already. So we have 7 of us pinned. Okay, this is better now. Okay. Okay, I love this. This is good. Good. Okay.
Perfect.
No, I've not done it yet. 1, 2, ready, check. Great. This is good.
Okay. Thank you all panelists. We will meet again, and thank you for your great presentation.
Bye, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Putting this. Thank you all. It was great to work with you. Hope to see you in the near future.
Right.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.